Hey folks, welcome to our virtual town hall event where we're going to talk about the issues affecting Mainers the most. My name is Jeff Beam. I'm a musician here in Portland, Maine. I've appeared with Senator Bernie Sanders a few times at rallies, but this is the first time I've done a digital event with him, so big thanks to Senator Sanders and his team for having me back for this one. I'm going to play some music for you. But before that, I want to tell you why I'm voting this November. There's so many reasons, but one I want to highlight tonight is, well, we're here at One Longfellow Square, a music venue in Portland, Maine. It's a nonprofit, and I work here, and we haven't had any shows. We haven't hosted anything since mid-March due to the pandemic. Funding for the arts has completely dried up under this administration and under this Senate. So I want to put Democratic senators in there and people that believe in funding the arts. So that's why I'm voting this November. In fact, I already voted. Maine has early voting, and I made a plan, and I did it. And it was really easy, and it felt great. So after that, I started talking to my friends and family, and I made sure they all have plans, and then I'm helping them follow through with their plans as well. And that's how we're going to win this election. So talk to your friends and family, make sure they have a plan, and then vote, and then you do it too. This song's called Think Twice, It's Not All Right. It's about anybody that plans on voting for Donald Trump. Think twice.
Together, realize, you should know better. so surprised. Now cheap for me.
Thank you so much. My name is Jeff Beam here in Portland, Maine. Thank you, Senator Sanders, and enjoy the virtual town hall. And don't forget to vote.
Hello and welcome to our town hall, Fighting for Justice in Maine, hosted by Senator Bernie Sanders. And let me just thank Jeff Beam of Falmouth, Maine, for your music and for kicking off our event and reminding folks that early voting is underway right now in Maine. I'm Misty Rebik. Thanks for joining tonight as we hear from folks in Maine who are showing up every day to fight for justice. We are just 13 days away from the most important election in modern history, and Maine is a battleground state that Joe Biden must win. And by turning out in massive numbers, we can together fight back against Trump's determination to undermine the integrity of our elections and even our democracy. So we've got to make this election too big to rig. That's a phrase I learned from our friend, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. We've got to make it too big to rig. In Maine, your early voting is underway, so you can vote right now. And not only that, but there's a tight Senate race happening right now in Maine. This election is not just about defeating Donald Trump, but it's also about the opportunity to flip the Senate and to elect progressives up and down the ballot all across the country. We've got our work cut out for us, but I know that we can do it. We cannot take anything for granted. So stay tuned. We've got a great panel lined up for you. We have the president of the Maine State Senate, Troy Jackson, Maine State Senator Justin Chenette, and we'll hear from leaders all across Maine representing the Penobscot Tribe, Maine People's Alliance, the Teachers Association, the Machinists, and much more. And for those of you who are joining, I've already seen people saying hello in the chat. Please take a moment, say hello. I see we've got folks joining from Lisa from Orland, Mark from Dayton, folks from all over the state joining us. Thank you for joining us tonight. And for those of you all across the country joining us, thank you so much. Now let's take a look at a short video featuring a couple of folks in Maine talking about what's at stake this election.
Maine is in such a unique spot right now. We are a purple state. Traditionally, we are split into two very distinct districts. And I feel like we have a chance to come together and be more united around things and not be so split. Our economy is based in natural resources, and we've seen a lot of our population get a lot older, and there aren't a lot of great jobs. So we're constantly looking for ways to kind of breathe life back into a lot of these old industries.
One of the most sweeping issues that has affected Maine over the past several years is climate change, specifically how it relates to our lobstering industry. We've seen a rapid increase in temperatures, and that poses a massive threat to the amount of lobsters in the area, which has a massive impact on the economy, given that it's one of our major industries.
The Trump administration has been a disaster for working families in Maine. A lot of these workers are frontline workers, they are essential workers, and they're having to choose between taking care of their children and their households and families and going to work.
I think that during the pandemic, we've seen kind of the lack of protection for Maine workers and for Maine renters really come into vivid focus as more and more people are severely suffering because of policies that we've seen implemented over the past several years.
In tribal nations, we always think about the next 7 generations of our people. And right now, our Mother Earth, our environment, our most vulnerable populations in this state, so much is riding on showing up, making a vote, making your voice count, and taking this country back in all the best ways.
That's right. Thank you to Jack and Maulian for setting the tone for tonight's discussion. We have a lot in store for you. So thank you for joining. I'll just give a few shout outs to folks in the chat. We have the Gale household tuning in from Portland, and some other folks. We've got Jeff and New Sharon. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about Maine tonight. So without further ado, the host of our hour is here. So let me introduce to you Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Misty, and Maine, thank you for tuning in tonight. I believe this is our 15th virtual rally that we have done in states all over the country. But with the exception of Vermont, this is the first virtual rally we're doing in New England. Makes me feel very good. And thank you all very much for being with us. This is, you've heard it before, so let me say it again because it actually is true. And that is that this is the most important election, not only in our lifetimes, goes beyond that, it is the most important election in the modern history of the United States of America, maybe going back to 1864 and the Civil War. And the reason for that is that we now have a president who is an unmitigated disaster, and we cannot take 4 more years of Donald Trump. Now, no matter what your political view may be, and I know that there are a lot of folks in Maine, not Democrats, not Republicans, many of them are independents. I'm an independent. No matter what your political persuasion may be, I hope you agree that we cannot continue to have a president who is a pathological liar. Because when you have somebody who lies all of the time, you debase political dialogue in the United States in a horrific way. And it gets lower and lower and lower. And we don't end up debating the issues, but we end up with a situation where people are just lying all of the time. And we've never seen an administration like the Trump administration, where there have been documented some 20,000 lies since he has been president. Unbelievable. Second of all, in the midst of this terrible COVID pandemic, which has taken some 220,000 lives all over this country, where today it is surging in many parts of America, we cannot continue having a president who does not believe in science. Now, addressing this pandemic is not going to become easy for anybody, and it's obviously taking place all over the world. But unless you have a president who believes in science, who brings the best scientists together so that we have some national guidelines, we're not going to make real progress. We cannot continue having a president who calls Dr. Fauci, for example, an idiot, who rejects basic scientific advice about the need for us to wear masks, for us to have social distancing, for us to be washing our hands. So we need an administration who develops policies based on science. And by the way, if we don't tackle this COVID pandemic, we're not going to get a handle on the economy. And we must do that because millions and millions of people have lost their jobs. They're struggling to feed their families tonight. They're struggling to pay the rent, and they are in desperate economic condition. And then on top of all of that, we cannot, in my view, have a president who really does believe he's above the law, who does not believe in the rule of law, who does not believe in our Constitution. Who would have believed that we would ever have a president who, when asked whether he would leave office if he loses the election, does not give a clear answer? So you have a president who is very much of an authoritarian, who thinks that he has the right to rule, and we cannot accept that. And then on top of all of that, you got a president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. So if those are not enough reasons for us to defeat Donald Trump, let me give you some others. And that is that we need to create an economy that works for all of us and not just wealthy campaign contributors or the people on top. And obscenely, at this unprecedentedly difficult moment in American history, where so many of our people are struggling, you're seeing a small number of billionaires just making out like bandits, increasing their wealth by hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. So with Joe Biden as president, we begin the process of creating a government that works for all. What does that mean? It means that we're going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage of at least $15 an hour. And I think we've got to go higher than that, but that's a start. It means that we have equal pay for equal work so that women aren't making 80 cents on the dollar compared to men. It means we make it easier for workers to join unions so they can engage in collective bargaining and earn the kinds of wages that they deserve. It means that we create millions of good paying jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, our roads and our bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, affordable housing. It means that unlike Donald Trump, we will have a president who understands not only that climate change is real, but that it is causing devastating problems in our own country and around the world, and it must be dealt with aggressively. And when we do that, and Biden has a $2 trillion plan to do that, we're going to create millions more decent paying jobs in terms of energy efficiency and sustainable energy. It means that in America today, we cannot have a racist as president, but we're going to have somebody who understands, as Joe Biden does, that our current criminal justice system is racist and it is broken. And that we need fundamental reforms so that we no longer continue having more people in jail than any other country on earth and have situations where police officers are murdering African Americans. And that we need real immigration reform. And that we need to take the burden of student debt off of millions and millions of people who are being crushed by that level of student debt. And we do that, among other things, by making public colleges and universities tuition free. So what this campaign is about is A, the absolute necessity, no matter what your political views may be, of defeating Donald Trump. This is not a person who should remain in the White House. It is about the need to create a Democratic Senate. We cannot continue having Mitch McConnell as the majority leader with a majority of senators being Republican, because he has presided over the worst do-nothing Senate that I have seen in my lifetime. They do nothing but just nominate and appoint right-wing judges. We have not dealt with the minimum wage. We've not dealt with jobs. We've not dealt with climate change, not dealt with criminal justice. We've not dealt with any of the major issues facing America. We cannot continue to do that. So I hope that we can expand our majority in the US House. And I hope that finally we are able to gain control over the United States Senate. And Maine is going to play a very, very important role in that process. So I know that there are folks out there who are disgusted with politics. They don't see the relevance of voting. And I just hope very much that you will reconsider. And I hope that you will appreciate that when we have millions of people who are struggling today, they need help. They need help in terms of a COVID-19 package, which will give them the income they need to survive. They need help in raising the minimum wage. They need help in getting jobs if they're unemployed. They need help in feeding their kids, et cetera, et cetera. This is not an election that any of us can afford to sit out. We just can't do it. Now, I know a lot of folks in Maine say, well, you know, like Vermont has 3 electoral votes. You guys have 4 electoral votes. We're not a big state. Doesn't make a difference. Yeah, it does make a difference. I suspect that in state after state, you're going to see very, very close elections. We don't know how they will break. Remember, Donald Trump became president because he won Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by combined less than 110,000 votes. That's no votes at all. So shock of all shocks, this whole thing could come down to Maine's 4 electoral votes. The United States control of the United States Senate could come down to what this election means and how it takes place in Maine. So I hope that all of you not only will come out to vote, and voting is already underway, you have early voting in Maine, but I hope also that you will bring your friends and your neighbors and your family out to vote as well. I know sometimes people get uncomfortable, you know, oh God, I gotta ask somebody to vote, you know, kind of awkward, who wants to do that? But this is a moment when we have to become uncomfortable, because what's happening in this country is extremely uncomfortable. So we have to overcome our own personal fears and concerns. We got to reach out to other people And we have to have in Maine and throughout this country the largest voter turnout this country has ever seen. Got to get rid of this guy in the White House, and we got to take this country in a very different direction. So with that, I now want to introduce somebody that I think many of you know. He is an old friend of mine, somebody who has done, in my view, a great job for the people of Maine as the president of the state Senate in Maine. And he has represented his Northern Maine Senate district since 2008. Please welcome Troy Jackson. Troy, thanks so much for helping to organize this event and for the great work you are doing.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Sanders, and obviously thank you for all that you do. Certainly inspires me. This election, like you said, is very important. I mean, I'm here in Northern Maine, my home in Allagash. I'm a 5th generation logger. My son is a 6th generation logger, and in Maine, we don't, as Maulian said, we don't have like an awful lot of opportunity. We have a lot, our natural resources industries, and logging is, one of those big 3 industries. And what I know very, very well is that there is large landowners here in Maine, billionaire landowners, that have used every break, every dirty trick, every tactic in the world to keep people that work incredibly hard with their thumb on them all the time, keeping control. Here in Maine, the landowners have used the immigration process under H2A. Well, now it's H2A, but H2B. They've used their influence in Washington, D.C. when H2B program wasn't enough for them to change logging into the H2A program, where there's no cap and they could have unlimited amount of people. What the problem is that the workers that come from Canada are great people, hardworking. In my opinion, the Canadian government does a great job for their people as far as protecting them, giving them health care, giving them prescription drugs. But when we have to compete as loggers against them, when the landowners force us to compete against them, we don't have health care, we don't have prescription drugs. We have to provide our workers' comp. We don't get the subsidies on equipment and stuff like that. And quite honestly, I've watched my father go through this. I've watched my son go through it. And, I've watched my area go through it. And people are very upset at the way things go. They don't feel like anyone's listening to them, anyone cares. And that's really been the whole reason why I ran for the legislature now, what seems on such a long time. And rising all the way to the Senate President's office, which is a huge honor for someone like me, is very much an everyday working class person. In the end, I don't know what it really means, because with this administration, I've used my office to send letters, have other elected officials sign on to them. We've shown with video documentation, we've shown with law enforcement documentation, violations of the H2 program, foreign workers that are bringing in their equipment with no prevailing wage rates established, which is an adverse effect on Americans' working conditions, wages and working conditions. We've shown them time after time after time where Canadian trucks with Canadian drivers have come into Maine, picked up loads in Maine, and delivered those very loads in Maine, which is a violation of immigration cabotage law. And at this point, what's even more frustrating than it actually happening and people losing those opportunities is that we can't even get a response from this administration. I mean, nothing. And to me, that is like the ultimate and just leaving people behind. And if I, as a state senator in Maine, feel like, I and my colleagues in the logging industry are being left behind, then I can only imagine what people that aren't in government all across this country are feeling like. That no one is looking after them in this administration. No one cares about them. They're just a pawn. I mean, I'm not a Wall Street person. I'm not a wealthy person at all. But I do believe that government has the right and the role to protect us. And when you see a law that's written And it's very clear that Americans' wages and working conditions cannot be affected by the use of H2 workers. And those workers are being used to exploit. I mean, they're not being used any better than we are. Just because their exchange rate is lower, their healthcare and stuff like that. That's unfair. It's not right. And it's greed that's driving it, just like you see in the pharmaceutical industry and stuff like that. And so that's why I've already voted. I voted last week. Very clear that I know who's gonna help me, the people I care about, the community I care about, the state I care about. That's Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. And in addition to that, like you said, with the U.S. Senate race, for the last 4 years, I worked with Speaker Gideon, either as a minority leader in the Senate or now as a Senate president. She's a rock. She has got a heart like no one. She's a fighter. Anything that I accomplished over the last 4 years was in complete partnership with her. I know where she's going to be. I know she has my back. She always has. And I want somebody that's going to fight for me and the people I care about. Wall Street and all the health insurance industries and all the pharmaceutical industries, they're going to be fine. I know they're going to be fine. But it's little people like us that don't have anyone. We don't have the big lobbyists. We don't have the high price executives that are in there in DC. And, we need politicians that give a shit about everyday working class people and those that, are being affected by an economy that has left us behind. There's not people feeling that it's been left behind. We have been left behind. And so that's why this election is wicked important to me. That's why I've supported Speaker Gideon, Jared Golden, and Biden and Kamala Harris. The Buy American plan is something that I believe wholeheartedly in. I think we need to do that. We need to give companies in this state, in this country, opportunities to grow, to expand, to not have to worry about being undercut. Again, I want to be very clear. The Canadian workers, that's where my ancestry come from. I know them well. I know how good people they are. But when you have billion-dollar landowners that are using them just so they can depress wages and make more money off of all of our backs, that's not right.
Well, Troy, thank you very, very much. Thank you for the great work you're doing in the state Senate there and for being with us tonight. Now I want to introduce Justin Chenette, who is the youngest member of the Maine State Senate and is the chairperson of the Government Oversight Committee. Justin, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator Sanders, and thank you so much for elevating the issue of campaign finance reform on a national level. Just a reminder to everybody, this year marked the 10th anniversary of the horrible Supreme Court decision known as Citizens United, which really allowed a floodgate of campaign contributions from corporations and lobbyists to flood into our politics and particularly in our government. And I'd like to focus a little bit about how this is impacting Maine, and I'm sure it's impacting wherever you're listening in from. In particular, corporate lobbyists aren't contributing to legislators or lawmakers out of the charitable goodness of their hearts. They expect something in return for that investment. In particular, lobbyists use these contributions to gain access, to gain influence, and the most prized possession is a vote. And this vicious cycle of using money really as a bidding tool for legislative influence doesn't benefit the average Mainer. It's simply lining the pockets of those who can afford to hire a lobbyist. And the average person shouldn't need to hire a lobbyist to benefit their lives from a policy perspective. We as a government have to be the people's lobbyists and should be. And so having a government of, by, and for the people should be something that unites us, unites this country, regardless of political background or persuasion. We shouldn't just accept a political system of the lobbyists, by the corporation, and for the bottom line. People are demanding that we restore trust, transparency, and accountability in the system of government. And how we do that is pass comprehensive campaign finance reform. And here in Maine, we're not waiting around for Citizens United to be overturned. We're actually doing something about it. We're focusing in on the undue influence of lobbyists, specifically how their money is influencing public policy decision-making, the shady use of political action committees known as PACs, and the revolving door of former lawmakers becoming lobbyists. This is critical. And so we've been able to actually, with Democratic majorities in the House and the Senate and in the governorship, this is why it's so important to pay attention to all of these races, both on a national and local and state level. With Democratic majorities, we were able to pass a whole host of reforms that were critical, banning lobbyist contributions, joining just a handful of states to say to lobbyists, no, we don't want your money, whether we're talking about sitting lawmakers or legislative candidates. We've tried to close the revolving door of former lawmakers becoming lobbyists by saying, hey, look, former lawmakers, you have to wait at least a year before you can start corporate lobbying. Hello. And then let's eliminate PAC slush funds. No one should be benefiting off political contributions. So we did those three things with Democratic majorities at the State House. So let's not forget, I know we're all focused on the national level and we need to elect Joe Biden. Let's look up and down the ticket to make sure we're electing Democrats across the board, because real reforms have to happen. State houses are really the last measure, particularly when we're seeing a Supreme Court held hostage by conservatives. And we're seeing with the potential Supreme Court nominee that we really need to take it upon ourselves to not only pass comprehensive campaign finance reform, but really make sure that we're promoting progressive policies that actually benefit people at the end of the day. Because when we have a government that's fighting out on behalf of whether Maine people or the American people, and not of a corporation or lobbyist who simply writes the biggest checkbook, then we're actually going to be starting to talk about and solving real problems that are impacting real people's lives at the end of the day.
All right, Justin, very well said. You know what? I'm going to get back to you later, because I think the rest of the country, and many of them are watching this program, they are not familiar with what you have already accomplished in Maine in terms of campaign finance reform. So I want to pick up on that issue a little bit later on. But now I'd like to introduce Mallory Cook. Mallory is a high school English teacher in Herman, Maine, and is a union member with the Maine Education Association. Mallory, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator. As a proud public school teacher and union member, I submitted my absentee ballot last week, and I encourage others to vote because our students are entitled to an education that is equitable and just. They need to feel welcomed, appreciated, and have their needs met no matter where they are, where they're from, or what their abilities. Most importantly, though, students and educators need to feel safe. And we're really concerned in Maine about how that will happen when December hits. That's the cutoff date for the COVID relief funds that were allocated to safely reopen and resume school operations. We still have students without devices and reliable internet. We have schools with inadequate ventilation systems, and many districts have dwindling supplies of personal protective equipment. Last spring, when our schools closed their doors, educators worked tirelessly to ensure our students were accounted for, safe, and had the materials needed to maintain their skills. There were sleepless nights as we worried about the mental health of our kids, their access to basic needs, all while caring for our own families. And this fall, educators in our states have been working to totally rethink our curricula, some simultaneously teaching online and in person. They're working to help students navigate this new landscape, not knowing when things could change at the drop of a hat. We are all fearful to lose touch with our most vulnerable kids if things shut down again. This emergency response by educators was originally powered by adrenaline, and now it's powered by necessity, but it's not at all sustainable. Our educators are burning out. In order to meet the needs of our students, all public schools need high-quality teachers who are committed to the work and feel supported by their communities and the leaders of their state and country. Educators are leaving the profession or choosing not to get into the profession because everyone deserves to feel valued, appreciated, and most importantly, safe. Education is a work of heart, but we need support to sustain that commitment. please, please, please vote to protect our students and to protect our public schools. Thank you.
Mallory, thank you very much. Our next panelist is David Sullivan. David represents 5,000 workers as the Grand Lodge representative for the Eastern Territory of the Machinists Union. He has been a Machinist Union member for 34 years and started his career by building ships at the Bath Iron Works. David lives in Richmond. David, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd just like to start with saying that it was very nice to see the beginning videos, all the lobster references, the buoys, the traps, the boats, and the pictures of the lobster, because it's a very iconic industry here in Maine and it's under severe attack from every angle. So it's very important for us in the state of Maine. And just by seeing that video just brings it back to me how important lobstering really is to Maine and how iconic it really is. As you said, I'm a Grand Lodge rep. I've been a union member almost my entire adult life. And I got lucky to be able to start a job in a union shop. So I didn't have to fight like, we've done in organizing drives where, people have to fight, people get fired. The right to form a union and join a union is very sacred to us. And we think everyone should have that ability. So that's something that we have fought for my entire career, that I personally fought for. And we've done organizing drives, all over the country trying to, help workers and get workers' rights. Here in Maine, we represent everything from, U.S. Navy shipbuilding at Bath Iron Works. We have Portsmouth Naval Shipyard where they build the submarines. We have paper mills, public, private. We have service contract. We have federal workers. So we have a whole host of things. And then recently in the last few years, we've been introduced to independent contractors as something that's kind of out of the box for organizing in both the logging industry and the lobster industry. So it's been a huge learning curve trying to figure out, different ways to kind of protect those industries because they've been under attack for a long time. So, we're wading into it. We're writing the pages as we go. There's no book to go to. There's no manual to seek what to do next. But we have such a in Maine, and we all know that being a purple state is that it's very diverse, and our industries are very diverse. So, we're looking for a president of the United States that is going to work and fight for all of us here in Maine. So it's very important that we have that. Just recently, Dr. Jill Biden was here in Maine for a tour in Maine, and she actually took the time to meet with some fishermen in Blue Hills. So we gave her a tour of an actual lobster boat, kind of explained, what a fisherman does during the day. And it was very moving, very emotional, kind of educational piece for her. But part of the biggest part of that was to talk about the day in a life and what a fisherman goes through on how, they start at 3 a.m, 4 a.m. They're they go way out to sea. They're on their own out there. It's very dangerous work. Mother Nature has a funny way of sneaking up on you out there. So, the safety, health, and welfare is very important to us for fishermen. So we tried to explain, our position on a few different things that face, some of the regulations that federal regulations that face the lobster industry that could literally by next May, shut down our entire fishery over the right whale regulations that they're trying to impose, where it's not only going to harm fishermen, it's probably going to kill fishermen with some of the regulations that they have going that we're working on. The state of Maine's working on it. I know, Senator Jackson, Speaker of the House, Gideon, Governor Mills, everybody's been working on this. So we've got it, in the limelight to try and talk about, how to protect our fishermen here in Maine in the iconic industry, but also protect the right whales. So we have ways to do that. We want the whales protected, but they need to be protected in different areas, not here in the Gulf of Maine. So it was nice to have that opportunity to talk to Dr. Biden about, our fight here in Maine and what we're going with and what we do day to day. So she was excellent. It was great to actually be heard. She asked a lot of questions. It was really good. So again, I think for us, we want a president that's going to look at labor. These are the people that do the hard work out there on the ocean. The safety, health, and welfare is job one for us. I mean, as a union representative, my entire life, I've been part of this, and safety is job one. We want people to come home at the end of the night, at the end of the day, to see their families. So then we also talk about some of the things that, the president has the power to do in executive orders. A lot of people don't think about that, but very powerful and can destroy your life, with the type of a pen. So, we have to be, think about that. And we need a president that's going to think about somebody that's got a 30-year career or 20-year, whatever your career is going in as a federal worker, can change overnight, like I said, with a swipe of a pen. So we're looking for somebody here in Maine that not only hears us, but sees us. So we want them to recognize what we do. We have people, here on the ground that know what's going on, and they have the insight to be, to give you the information you need to make the right decision. So using up-to-date science, using, just common sense. We call it good old Maine common sense, goes a long ways here. But we want somebody that's going to fight for all of us here. So thank you for having me on.
Well, David, thank you very much for the great and important work that you are doing. And clearly one of the goals of the Biden administration, and me personally, will be to expand the trade union movement, to make it easier for workers to belong to unions and not have to deal with all of the illegal activity that we're currently seeing from big businesses who are trying to deny workers the right to organize. Right now, our next panelist is Jenny Perkol. Jenny is the organizing director for Maine People's Alliance. In 2017, Jenny did something enormously important. She helped manage the successful statewide ballot initiative to expand Medicaid in Maine, and currently she lives in South Portland. Jenny, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Senator Sanders. I'm so happy to be here. So I've been organizing for more than 10 years, and I found organizing kind of by accident. When I was in my 20s, I was working 3 jobs, but it was pre-Obamacare, and I didn't have health insurance. I got sick, but couldn't afford to go to the doctor, so I waited until it was an emergency to seek care and ended up with thousands of dollars of medical debt. And this put me on a path that led to me getting my master's in social work and interning at Maine People's Alliance, where I fell in love with the idea that instead of working with one family at a time to navigate a broken system, I could work with many families and whole communities to change the system so it works for us. And that's what MPA does. Our mission is to create a world where everyone has what they need, contributes what they can, and no one is left behind. We are in communities across the state talking with people every day, learning about how policy affects people's lives, and then working together to find ways to make government work better for everyone. Together, we build power, inspire new leaders, and win campaigns that change what is politically possible. Over the past 3 decades, we have served as a leader in state campaigns for expanding healthcare access, including Medicaid, affordable housing, racial justice, immigrant rights, a higher minimum wage, and tax fairness, among others. And this election isn't just about the usual life and death issues of healthcare and climate change. With corporate and conservative interests warping the courts, suppressing votes, and even dismantling the post office, these last few weeks may be our last chance to protect our democracy and the future of our nation. And as we've heard, Maine is a critical state. We need to make sure that both our Electoral College votes go for Biden and that we unseat Susan Collins, paving the way for a more functional Senate. We are currently hosting trainings, phone banks, text banks, lit drops about not just the federal races, but also critical state legislative races. As Senator Chenette mentioned, the state government is super important. And after the election, we'll be doing planning for the state legislative session and working with national partners on federal campaigns. Democracy needs us to stay involved well past Election Day. So go to MainePeoplesAlliance.com or .org rather, and sign up today to join us. We need you to be with us. Thank you.
Jenny, thank you very much for the great work you're doing. We're going to get to questions in a minute, but before we do, let me take the chair's prerogative here to ask some of the panelists the question myself. Justin, I want to get back to you. We have, as I think most of the viewers know, a fairly corrupt political and election system. As we speak, billionaires are making enormous contributions to buy the candidates that they like. You correctly mentioned that we are now 10 years into one of the worst Supreme Court decisions ever rendered, Citizens United. But Maine has a history for many years now of allowing candidates to legislature and statewide office to have an alternative to hustling money from wealthy people. Can you briefly tell us what has gone on in Maine and how it is being utilized today?
Absolutely. Thanks, Senator Sanders, for bringing that up. So we have it's called the Clean Elections Program. So basically, if a candidate participates in this system, they collect X number of, we call them $5 contributions, meaning you can only collect exactly $5, not a penny more, not a penny less, from individuals just within your legislative district. And if you collect a certain number, then you'll qualify for public financing. But that means that you can't accept any monies from lobbyists, corporations, special interest groups. That's the only amount. It's sort of like Monopoly. It's sort of like that's the money that you can play with, and that's it. And that allows us to focus on having policy conversations, actually talking with voters and actually engaging, and not focused on having high stakes fundraisers, not talking to corporations or lobbyists. So we have a great system, but we absolutely still have more work to do because, as you know, PACs have infiltrated our politics. And so PACs are still a huge problem, even for states like Maine that have a clean elections program.
Justin, let me ask you this, and I think many of the viewers around the country would like to know, how many candidates take advantage of the system, of your clean election system?
Well, let's take the state Senate, for instance. As Senate President Jackson knows, a majority of our Senate candidates on both sides of the aisle actually participate in the clean election system, which is really great to see that. Obviously, we can always aim for 100%, particularly on the House side, but we have a great participation rate
from Democrats and Republicans.
From on the Senate side, Democrats and Republicans. I think on the House side, we gotta talk to our Republican colleagues a little bit, but I think the public is demanding that folks become clean elections candidates. So I think there's even pressure during campaign cycles that, why aren't you a clean elections candidate?
Well,
So
and I just want to mention here, as a former member of the House and the United States Senate, it is no great secret that here in Washington, Democrats and Republicans spend an enormous amount of time on the phone or at fundraising events hustling money from wealthy people. And instead of, as Justin mentioned, talking about the issues, debating the issues, they're out raising money. So I want to thank the people of Maine. And I know you can improve your system. We can always make all systems better. But thank you for being a model or an example of what other states can do to take big money out of politics. And now I want to go and ask a question to Jenny, if I might. Jenny, I know you were active in making sure that Maine expanded Medicaid. How severe is the healthcare crisis in Maine today?
That's a great question. Yeah, Maine is really benefited from the Medicaid expansion. We had 70,000 people who were without health care who were falling into the gap before we expanded. And just recently, I saw an article that said that if the Affordable Care Act was undone by the Supreme Court, which that might happen in late November, that Maine would be one of the hardest hit states. We've got a lot of folks who really rely on it for their healthcare, and we still have folks who are struggling to afford their healthcare, even with all the stuff that's in place. So we need to continue doing more.
Okay, good. Okay, Misty, I've asked my questions. Now you ask yours, and let's get going.
Right. Sounds great. Well, thank you to all the panelists. Incredible to hear what's been happening on the ground in Maine. We do have some folks who are tuning in live to ask some questions of you. So we're going to actually start with Maulian Dana, who is tuning in from the Penobscot tribe. Welcome to the show. What's your question for the panel?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Senator Sanders, for hosting this. And thank you for everything, your leadership. Thank you. My name is Maulian Dana. I serve as the Penobscot Nation Tribal Ambassador. I'm a mother of two and a proud citizen of my tribal nation and the state of Maine. My question is, can you speak to the importance of tribal sovereignty and how it relates to the relationship between tribal nations and the state and federal governments? What commitments are you willing to make to help ensure that tribes are acknowledged as the stewards and caretakers of our lands, waters, and people? Thank you so much.
Well, let me start off and others can jump in. Maulian, I don't think it is any great secret that from the inception, the first days of this country before we were a country, that the Native American people were treated in the most shameful manner imaginable. Treaties were signed, treaties were broken, they were lied to. And here we are in the year 2020, and the Native American community still really doesn't have a seat at the table in terms of the future of their own lives. So, you know, I know that Joe Biden believes, as I do, that the contributions of the Native American people to our culture, to our way of life, to our understanding of the environment are just extraordinary. And that we have to very much change the relationship of the federal government to the Native American people. And that is that we have got to respect sovereignty. We cannot just do things without involving the communities themselves. And when you look at Native American communities all over this country, the unemployment rate off the charts, healthcare, a disaster, educational opportunities, terrible, been hard hit by the COVID pandemic. So we need a revolution in the way we respond to the Native American people. And lastly, what I would say is more than any other group of people that I can think of, it has been the Native American community that has told all of us that you cannot go to war against the environment and expect to have an environment that's supportive of us. That we've got to live in harmony with the environment and not just destroy the environment for short-term gains. And I would hope that under a Biden administration, we will utilize the expertise and the knowledge of the Native American people to kind of educate all of us in America to understand that if you want a future for this country, we cannot continue to destroy our environment. We cannot continue to ignore climate change. So we need a whole lot of work in that area, and I'm confident that the Biden administration will take us forward in a significant way.
Senator Jackson or Senator Chenette, did either of you want to chime in?
Sure. Well, I mean, Maulian knows, well, first I know what a great ambassador Maulian is for the Penobscot, but for all the tribes. And much like Senator Sanders said, you know, to work on these problems, you have to understand that they are an issue, they are a problem. You can't bury your head. And for too long, the state of Maine did that, just thought they'd go away. And that's not how you fix issues that are in front of you. And so for us, Senator Chenette knows, you know, Senator Mike Carpenter was chair of judiciary, worked with the tribes on legislation to open up, you know, the Indian claim settlement. And unfortunately, because of COVID and because some of my colleagues not being willing to go back and finish their job, we weren't able to actually make meaningful change on that. But, you know, we certainly opened the conversation up, I think, like in a way that hadn't been before. And it's my commitment that if I get reelected, that we're going to finish, you know, those conversations and finish that legislation so that the tribal members are respected, do get what they deserve, and feel like they are an equal part of you know, the people of the state of Maine and have their sovereignty at the same time. So that's my commitment. I believe Maulian knows that I'm very sincere in that.
Well, thank you very much, Troy, and Maulian, thank you so much for the question.
Great. So we have another question coming in from Thompson, Maine. We have Rafael Macias. Welcome to the show. What's your question for the panel? Maybe. Okay, let's go to our next person while we're waiting. Maybe we're having a little tech problem there. We also have someone tuning in from Lewiston. I'd like to welcome Mana Abdi to the show. Welcome to the show, Mana.
Hi, Senator Bernie. My name is Mana. As I mentioned, my name is Mana. I am 24 years old, Mainer, but my family is originally from Somalia. As a college graduate and immigrant youth myself, I know the value of an educated community. However, working with young people, I see many do the right thing, pursuing education, and then having little options that give them the economic security they deserve. Some of the youth I work with as a vice president of Maine Youth Network end up leaving the state after graduating because they can't afford the opportunity. They can't find the opportunity they need. I find myself having to work 2 jobs in order to make ends meet, and that was even before COVID. My question is, what are the panelists each doing to create more opportunities for Maine youth, both those who wish to pursue higher education and those who don't? Thank you.
Well, let me start that off, Mana. You know, Trump has talked about how great his economy was before the pandemic. But the truth is, as you all know in Maine and we know in Vermont, that half the people in this country live paycheck to paycheck. And that means that the wages they earn are so low that they can't afford any savings. And if an emergency happens in the family, a healthcare emergency, car breaks down, they literally have to borrow money or just don't have the money to deal with those emergencies. So what we need to do is, number one, create many, many millions of jobs that pay people a living wage. We don't need more jobs that pay starvation wages. And what does that mean? It means that for a start, in Maine, in Vermont, and all over America, we have an infrastructure that is crumbling. That is our roads, our bridges, our wastewater plants, our water systems. We need affordable housing. We need to rebuild our schools. And we can put a whole lot of people to work at good union wages doing just that. In terms of climate change, it is the same thing. We've heard tonight about how climate change has impacted Maine, and it's impacting fisheries, by the way, all over the world as the oceans become warmer. And we can, once again, create millions of good paying jobs combating climate change. As a senator from Vermont, I brought a lot of money into my own state to help people weatherize their homes so that when winter comes, you don't see all the heat going out of the windows or going out of the roof, but people can have a snug, comfortable house and save substantial sums of money on their heating bills. We can do that all over Maine, all over Vermont, all over the United States of America. We're going to invest in sustainable energies like solar and wind and other sustainable energies, and that creates us jobs as well. What governments have done in the United States for too long is provide enormous, many billions of dollars in corporate welfare. That is money that has gone to large profitable corporations and some of the wealthiest people in this country. We got to change that approach. We have to start investing in small and medium-sized businesses, which are the backbone of the economy of Maine and Vermont and virtually every state in this country. In terms of education, you know, I hope everybody remembers we're the wealthiest nation on earth. We should not have hundreds of thousands of bright young people unable to afford to go to college. That is crazy. We should not have millions of people leaving school deeply in debt, being strangled by this student debt that they never, end up paying off. So we have got to change our national priorities. Instead of investing in nuclear weapons, tax breaks for the rich, we've got to invest in education from childcare to graduate school and make educational access available to every person, regardless of their income. All right, those are just some overviews that I have. Anybody else want to jump in on that important question? Okay, Misty, you got some other questions there?
Yep, I think we, Raphael, are you there?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me now.
We can hear you. Thank you so much. So I'd like to welcome you to the show. Raphael is a volunteer with Maine People's Alliance and is tuning in from Topsom.
Thank you very much, Senator Sanders and panel. I'm very glad to be here. My name is Raphael Macias, and I'm a retired naval officer living and working in Maine. My question to the panel is about protecting the rights of workers, particularly the easily exploited migrant worker and immigrant workers. This topic is very important to me, and the reason why I joined Maine People's Alliance. Here in Maine and in Vermont, dairy farmers rely on the labor of immigrant workers and whose efforts keep farms and the broader communities afloat. However, some of these workers end up in substandard housing without running water or fair pay. My question to the panel is, what can be done to ensure that the agricultural industry pays the men and women and children farming at least the minimum wage, and protects and treats them with fairness and dignity precisely because they are providing America's tables with food?
Well, let me just start it off and then I'll give it over to folks on the panel. You're quite right. All over this country, we are seeing migrant workers being exploited. We are seeing undocumented workers being taken advantage of in ruthless ways because they can't stand up and fight for their rights. Under legislation that I have introduced, every worker in this country would receive at the least a minimum wage of $15 an hour. Workers would have the right to organize in unions and have the protection of unions. And we have got to end this terrible abuse and exploitation of people in the agricultural economy. As you've indicated, these are the people who are feeding us. They're keeping us alive. And I know our brilliant president wanted to throw all of the undocumented out of the country. Well, he would learn in about 3 minutes that the price of food would skyrocket in this country, and we would not have the food that we need to feed our people. So those are some of my thoughts. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in on that.
Well, I mean, obviously I see that here in Maine, Senator Sanders, with brush cutters, tree planters, up and down actually the coast, and what I see is people that are used bad, regardless. If you're a worker, oftentimes there's somebody above you that's trying to get as much as they can out of you, and not caring at all about where you or your family's going to land. And I've seen, like I said, two workers in the agricultural industry that were scared to talk to anyone. We're supposedly going to get a certain amount per hour, but it was basically on a production rate. And they had to go so hard and put their safety at so much risk that, I felt much more, kindred to them than anybody else, because I knew exactly what it was like. And so it doesn't matter where you come from, in this world. Workers deserve to be paid fairly. They deserve to be safe. And like Dave said, they deserve to have their family know that they're going to come home at night. So that's why I think it's important that they're all protected.
Okay, thank you very much, Troy.
Could I add to that too? I mean, just some of the stuff that we've dealt with here in Maine is in this type of process, it begins right in the beginning. And these corporations and companies that put in for these visas, there's no accountability. There's laws that could be, they're on the books now that could be enforced. And they're just not doing that. There's no oversight. There's nobody looking at their living conditions, where they're going to be, what they're doing for work, how many hours they're working in a day, right? Those are things that we have to step up and protect them. They're coming to our country to do this work, and it's work because we don't have the workers, so they're here. But we have to start right at the beginning of this process, right at the application piece of this, and say, if you're applying for these people to come into work, we want to know what they're doing for work, what they're going to get paid, what their hours of work are, where are they living, what are the conditions they're going to be under, because if we don't stand up for them, nobody will. So
well said, David. That's exactly correct. Misty?
Yeah. Okay. Well, we have one more question here. I think we have time. I'm just going to read this one out. This came in from the chat. It says, what will Biden and Democrats do to assure people like me, especially those who are not lucky enough to have health insurance, have access to a fair and functional healthcare system? This comes from Nick, who's tuning in from a place I am not going to be able to pronounce, Buckport. But thank you, Troy. I see you laughing.
Misty is very good with the names of towns in Iowa, right?
Yes.
Maine, not so much.
Kennebunkport.
So he's asking, what are we going to do? What are Biden and the Democrats going to do to make sure?
Let me just say this, a couple of things. What Biden is pledged to do is a number of things. He is going to expand the Affordable Care Act to cover tens of millions more people. He is going to lower the age of Medicare eligibility from 65 down to 60. He is going to lower prescription drugs so that we do not continue paying by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. In my view, I think all of that is a good start. He's going to expand community health centers as well, which are very important in Maine as they are in Vermont, where people can gain access not only to primary health care, but to dental care, to mental health counseling, and to low-cost prescription drugs. So we're going to substantially increase funding for community health centers and many other things. So he has a vision. But I have to say that, I have a disagreement with Joe on that. I think at the end of the day, what we have to recognize is that the current healthcare system is dysfunctional, it is cruel, that we are now spending twice as much per person on healthcare as the people of any other nation, while we have 90 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. And in some cases, we're paying 10 times more for prescription drugs than our friends in Canada or in other countries around the world. And I think the function of a healthcare system should not be to make the healthcare industry or the drug companies huge profits. It should be to provide quality care to all people, which is why I believe we've got to move toward a Medicare for all single payer program. That's my view. That is not Joe's view. But Joe's view will expand access to healthcare to tens of millions of Americans, and it's an important step forward.
Thank you, Senator. So I just want to thank our question askers tonight, Maulian, Raphael, Mana. Thank you for joining, and also all of you on the chat who put in your questions. We are short on time, so I want to get to the final piece here, which is that you got to turn out and vote. So if you're voting in Maine, I want to give you a few reminders here. Your registration had to have been postmarked by October 19th. And for those of you who forgot, it's the 21st today. So if that is the case, you still can register until November 3rd, okay? So you can still do that. So make sure you do that. If you are voting by absentee ballot, your ballot needs to be received by October 29th. That's in about 8 days from now. And if you're returning your ballot by mail or in person, it's got to be received by 8 p.m. on November 3rd. So we're still in early voting, so that means you can vote now. And if you need to look up more information, you can follow that link on the screen, iwillvote.org. Make sure you get your votes in. And like we said at the beginning of the show, we've got to make it too big to rig. So take 5 friends with you, take family, family and coworkers, anybody else, encourage folks to vote. With that, I just want to thank our panelists for joining the show, for our question askers, for all of you, the viewers who joined us tonight to hear about what's happening in Maine and how together we can defeat Donald Trump. And with that, back to you, Senator.
Well, thank you very much, Misty. And let me thank all of the members of the panel, all those who asked questions, all those who were on the video, Jeff Beam, musician. Look, nothing more that I can say. If you want to continue having a president who doesn't believe in the rule of law, who lies all of the time, who doesn't believe in science, who is a racist and a sexist and a homophobe, well, you got it. You can vote for Donald Trump. But I think the people in Maine and the people in Vermont and people all over this country are catching on. We have had enough of Trump. Trump said the other day, he said something really funny. He said, if I'm not reelected, you're going to go back to having a boring government. Well, you know what? I think the people very much now would like a government that does not have to deal every single day with Donald Trump's craziness and all of the weird things that he says and that he does. We would like to have a boring government that focuses on healthcare for all, on educational opportunities for all, on decent jobs for all, on protecting our environment and combating climate change. Maybe, just maybe, the American people might want to move forward to focus on issues that impact their lives rather than all of the crazy stuff that Donald Trump is saying and doing. So with that, let me just reiterate, Maine's 4 electoral votes could make the difference in terms of who the next president of the United States is. Your election can determine whether Democrats control the United States Senate or not. And I surely hope that we will. That's it. I just want to thank all of, again, the folks who are watching, the folks who are on the panel. Thank you all very much. Let's go forward together. Thank you.